be talking today about a number of things. About wellness, okay? And I'm going to apologize to start off and say it might feel kind of hopping all over the place. And I'm going to try to make it make sense. But there's a lot of things that go into wellness, right? And a lot of ways that we can take better care of ourselves. We are in this helping profession here, and as everyone who's here knows, being in this role, in this world that we are in here at Progressive, it can be really draining. We are here for our patients, and if we're not careful, it can drain us, I don't want that for you. I don't want that for our patients, because if you're wiped out and drained and burnt out, that's not good for our patients either, but primarily it's not good for you. So there are a lot of things that go into wellness, and a lot of what I'm going to say you all know. I know that, but it never hurts to hear things fresh and again, and be reminded of things that we can do to take care of ourselves. So I think that, everybody's pretty aware that you can put our focus on wellness into some buckets, right? There's eating healthy, good nutrition, trying to stay away from ultra-processed foods and things like that are not as healthy for us, and get healthier foods in, vegetables, proteins, all that stuff. Getting enough water in, that goes along with that healthy nutrition. Sleep is one of the primary ways that we take care of ourselves, and if we're not paying attention to getting good sleep, that affects everything. Exercise, moving more, getting some movement into our lives is another one of those buckets that helps any of us in our efforts at wellness. And then stress management. We talk about that a lot. You hear about it a lot. And there are a lot of different ways that we can kind of tackle our stress and our stress responses. Nutrition, eating well, those are things that I think that, everybody knows about. We don't always, practice what we know. One of the things that, and I want to say a big, huge disclaimer right now. I'm just sharing, kind of like helpful Hannah tips. I'm not an expert on any of this. I'm not a nurse when I talk about nutrition, and I'm not a dietitian. So I get this information from a couple of main sources, to be honest, and I'll share those sources with you. I love podcasts. That's one of my self-care things. That's something that I enjoy doing, is listening to podcasts. So on that drive from Baton Rouge oftentimes I'll be listening to a podcast. And two of my favorite people that I get some of this information from are Peter Attia and then Andrew Huberman. And they are both, Peter Attia is a physician. Andrew Huberman is, he's also a physician of neuro. But the thing that I like about them both is that they both bring on experts onto their podcast. They don't pretend to know all this themselves. They bring on experts, and they're both also focused on sharing information that's evidence-based, based on a lot of valid research, not just something they heard. So that's why I listen to those two in particular. Plus, I'm kind of into the health realm more than other things. So I'm telling you, those are two sources that are where I get a lot of this stuff. And this is just helpful Hannah tips. If you know something better or different, that's great. So please don't think any of this is carved in stone. But in terms of like sleep hygiene, I know that we talk with our patients about this, but do we practice this ourselves? One of the things that happens here at Progressive with the patients, one of the very first things, or certainly something that's always hit on when they meet with their psychiatrist, is how are you sleeping? Okay, that just impacts our whole world. Your brain heals itself during the night. It reorganizes thoughts during the night. There's a lot of stuff that happens during our sleeping time that's really critical to our overall well-being. So there are a number of things that you can do that the therapists, I know, clinicians know all this because they're talking about it with their patients, but I want everybody to know all this. One of the things that you can do is in the mornings, if you can get early morning light when you get up in the morning, that early morning sunlight, and actually the later afternoon sunset light, that golden hour if you're a photographer, those times of day help your circadian rhythm. So it helps your mind be in a better place to sleep better through the night. So that's one little thing. If you can get some morning sunlight and late afternoon dusk kind of light. We know, I think everybody knows this, we don't always pay attention to it, but if you can cut out, like especially small screen time, scrolling, don't be in, if you're one of those persons who, before bedtime you scroll on your phone, that's not good for your sleep. And you might say, well, I fall asleep fine. I don't have a problem falling asleep. They still find that that's not good for your overall through the night sleep hygiene. So if you can reduce your screen time as the evening wears on, even start turning the lights a little lower, not having your brightest lights on in the evening. It's if you kind of keep in mind that, as humans, we've been on the planet a lot longer without electricity than we have been with electricity. So our whole bodies are designed to function with it getting dark and then getting light in the morning, and maybe having firelight right in the evening, but not having these things in the evening. So that's something you can do is, as you are winding down the evening, if you're in the living room watching TV, you can turn off the kitchen lights, stuff like that. They also say, lots of us, I know I do this at home until I learned this, is that you should keep the lights on during the day. Again, because it's signaling your mind that this is daytime. Lots of us turn the lights off because we let the sunlight come in, right? Well, when it's coming in through the windows, it's really not enough. Now Dan's going, the electricity bill. I know. However, if you struggle with sleep, these are some things you can do different that might be helpful for you. So those are, and then, I know some people use some soothing scents at bedtime. They might, have lavender that they spritz. Lavender is a good scent. Chamomile tea, certainly no caffeine in the evenings, that kind of thing. But there are, things like that can help you have better sleep, and better sleep is key to everything else. You can't, you don't have energy during the day if you get good sleep, right? Then on to exercise stuff. Lots of times, there are a number of things that we can do, and I'm going to lump exercise. I'm thinking more physical, just in general, physical stuff that we do. How many were here when we did microbursting? A few, a handful, okay. So.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah. So, yeah, Sharon learned something when we did the microbursting. So one thing we did a number of years ago is a thing called microbursting, and at that time, when people talked about it, they only talked about it in terms of physical. But it's really kind of expanded now, and microbursting really actually refers not just to physical energy, but to other types. It's about achieving energy through small changes, small bursts, right? Thus the name microburst, right? And you can think of those, your energy in 4 dimensions. The physical, which is what we did a number of years ago, where we just emphasized everybody moving a little bit more, having these little microbursts, like come from clinical counseling up to administration. You know, you gotta check for doing that. So physical energy, how much energy do you have and what can you do that can help give you a burst of energy? Emotional, and this refers to like the quality of your energy. Positive or negative? Is your emotional energy largely in the positive realm, or can you slide into that negative stuff? And we'll say a little bit more about that. Mental, your ability to focus and concentrate. And then even spiritual, you know, what gives you meaning and purpose in your life? And there are little things you can do to kind of spur any of those things. And we'll talk a little bit more about all that in just a second. But in terms of the physical, there are lots of things you can do. You can get up from your desk and walk outside and walk around a little bit. You can do chair exercises. They have these online that will tell you things you can do, stretches you can do in your chair. Lots of times we think of chair exercises just in terms of like the elderly sitting in the assisted living, you know, and the person directing some chair exercises. But that's something we can do when we're doing a lot of sitting at work. That's something we can do. One thing that is talked about is getting up and moving like every 45 minutes to an hour for about 5 minutes or 2 minutes or any minutes, but get up and move. You know, some say, and they've done studies, they say in quotes that like six bouts of like 5 minutes or 10 minutes throughout the day is better than all sedentary and then an hour exercise. Like if you could do 10 minutes of something that's actual physical something, walking up these steps or walking around the property or in the heat coming in here and walking around, doing in your office, doing some, this might sound silly, but I've done it, doing some push-ups in your office. Stand up and do 5 push-ups. Do them on your knees. That's fine. You know, anything that gives you. Hi, Shanna's. Wall push-ups. Yeah. Start with the wall. Start with just wall push. I would start even before plank. I would do wall push-ups. But there are lots of ways, and all of this is available online. You can just Google, you know, how to get started with whatever, and you'll have all kinds of wonderful ideas. Also, there's a lot of things online that we can do that help with that. Yoga, you can do yoga online. You can do an exercise routine online. So lots of times people go, well, I can't get to a class, or I can't afford a membership someplace. But You can find so much online for free nowadays in this realm. So those are things. So those things, little actual exercise bursts like that, like doing push-ups or tricep dips or lunges, something like that, are called. They call those trigger sessions, and those, again, are supposed to be just cumulatively just as beneficial as if you did it all in one bout. So, and sometimes that's more doable. If you have problems with your back and you're sitting a lot and you need to put something under your desk to put your foot on, that helps your back. There are things you can do, or get a little ergonomic mouse for all the computer work we have. One of the things that is talked about is getting away from the screen. Getting away from the computer. If you're sitting at the computer for a long time, getting away, just move. In terms of movement, I had a friend who, she worked in a tall building, and every time she had to use the restroom, she would go down 3 flights to the restroom down 3 flights. So I was like, oh, we're not in a big building. Well, people could go from one building to the other one, or from the upstairs to the downstairs, or other, and that's a time that you're going to move. You are going to get up from your desk, and so that was something. Any little tricks you can to get movement into your day is a good thing. And then if you struggle, I know I do, I'll be in the zone of working, and time kind of slips away. So one of the things that I know I've talked with the staff about previously is, having a timer. We all have that on our phones now. But the Pomodoro technique, set yourself a little timer, and not only will it remind you to get up and move a little bit, but it makes you break. And when you do that break, it allows you to come back and be more focused in your work, and not just be kind of floating through the day where, wow, I've been productive. I don't really know how I was productive, but all of a sudden it's the end of the day and I wasn't, kind of as productive as I wanted to be. So sometimes using that Pomodoro technique of segmented times of 40 minutes of concentrated time and then breaking. Know that, some people I know take off for lunch just to get off campus. That's something you can do. And you don't even have to, if you just need to get away and do that, and you don't have to be going for lunch. It could be your lunchtime and you may have eaten here, but you need to get away for a little bit. That's fine. That's fine. Sometimes just getting away is a good thing.
Just said it for clarity. So you can have lunch, but you'll have a lunch break. That means you can't just leave and go on a trip.
Right. That's true. Yes. Everybody's there.
Oh,
We have no staff here.
I said you can leave.
Another just tip, which is an odd one. Y'all are gonna go really. But we all know we should be wearing sunscreen for our health. But also, all this indoor stuff, they're also finding that if you wear tinted sunscreen, it helps that even these lights are not so good for our skin. And the tinting in tinted sunscreen, or if you actually wear foundation, that too, but the tinted sunscreen actually helps for indoors. Who knew? Didn't know that. Now this is something that's really interesting for right now in the heat of the summer. So, nurses, I think you'll back me up on this, that most of us are taught that if somebody, if you were an athlete in high school or something, that if somebody was suffering from heat stroke, you quickly put ice bags under their arms and their groin area. That's not the best thing. The best thing that cools you quickest are the palms of your hands, the bottoms of your feet, and the upper part of your face. These are all areas where we don't have hair on us, and it's actually different skin, different capillaries there than all the rest of our bodies, and it's more effective at cooling us than anything else. And isn't that crazy? But it is. So we've handed out, I know, to the techs and housekeeping and maintenance, those cooling things. Well, the best thing would be to have them nice and cold and just hold on to it. Put it on your forehead, not so much the back of your neck, but more on your forehead, your hands. And that's, one of the things, this is funny, but this is the same, this is for all mammals. Because all mammals have, like, you think your dog has the pads on their feet, right? Now they have hair on there, but primates don't have some primates don't have it here, right? But this is like an aside, but we have 2 dogs, and one is a younger, she's only a little over a year now, and we've noticed, and she gets hot because she runs, 2 labs, and we noticed that we have this little tub for them to drink out of. Well, she will come and stand in it. Well, who knew? But now, once I learned this, I'm like, oh, she's cooling herself, The other dog goes in and lays on the tile, but she stands in that tub. She gets her little head wet. She's kind of goofy, but she's doing this thing that I just recently learned about. So, again, these are helpful hand tips. But if you have a child who's out running sports and stuff and they're overheated, you want to know the best way to help your child cool off, not just for ourselves. Another thing that I brought up we had a gastroenterologist come one time from Lane and gave us a nice little in-service about gastro health. And I asked him at the time, and he said, oh yeah, that's something very good, very good. Squatty potty. You know how I am about the squatty potty. So the squatty potty is a little step stool thing that you keep at your toilet, helps you go. That's all I'll say. Look it up. It's a good thing. It really, but again, I'll tell you again, think about it. They've done, they've looked at the research, and countries like Asia, the Asia Pacific countries, South African, in the sub-Sahara countries where a lot of folks sit way down, way down, right? And sit that way a lot, and also use the restroom if you've ever, that's how you use the restroom, right? Those folks don't have colon cancer. They just don't have colon cancer. Whereas Western nations that use a high toilet, sitting at a 90 degree instead of that down angle, and it's physiologically works. But look up the squatty potty. Look it up. You can get one. But that's, those places that's how they use the restroom, that's how they sit a lot, don't have the colon cancer because they're actually evacuating everything. Stuff's not left. So that's another physical wellness thing you can do for yourself. Then I know that we talked about, I know the therapists talk about, I'm going to put that under the stress management. The last thing I'm going to say that Dan's probably going to have something to say about too is bone health. Okay. And this is about like longevity and quality of life as we age, okay? Women tend to have more brittle bones than the men do. If you're smaller framed, that has a lot to do with it, blah, 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 okay? Well, resistance training is very good for bone density, to increase bone density. And you probably, driving anywhere where people are walking, you're seeing people now wearing these weighted vests. It's a way to add weight while you're moving, and it helps increase your bone density. And when I say that this has an impact on longevity, I'm going to tell you two things. First of all, again, Peter Attia, going to Peter Attia. His stance is that one of the things you want to avoid at all costs, if possible, is a hip fracture as you get older. Because what happens when people who are elderly, we're not talking young people, but elderly, get a hip fracture is like within 1 year, a huge, and I don't have the correct percentages, but something like 30% of people die within the first year after they've had a hip fracture. 5 years, that goes up to like 60%, okay? That's huge. That's one of the major causes of death, is having a hip fracture, and then you die not long afterwards. More that, like, breast cancer used to be a death sentence, not so much anymore. You might get it, but you don't usually die from it anymore. So things like that. So you want to avoid fractures of the femur and the hip. And the way to do that is have better bone density, better balance. But that's a cumulative thing. So don't think that you only need to worry about it when you get old. If you can have really good bone density early on, it's cumulative, and you kind of bring that benefit with you. So about those weighted vests, they did a study in the nursing home of, nursing home people. And they had them wear a light weighted vest, probably like 5 pounds to 10 pounds, and just wear it during the day. Just wear it. They didn't have them do anything different. They just wore it. Those folks' bone density scores went from quite low, but increased by like 35% in 3 months.
Wow.
And those who kept doing it increased even further just by wearing a weighted vest, not by doing push-ups and things of that nature with the weighted vest, although that's beneficial. But so that's something. Shoot, you can get a backpack and put some stuff in it and move around the house. And the reason I said Dan might have something to say is, in my mind, it'd be fine for me if anybody wants to wear a weighted vest here at work, go for it, but that might be something we have to discuss. So don't take that as an official go-ahead yet. But shoot,
Like an angles.
And like I say, it doesn't have to be a snazzy something. It can be a backpack that you have at the house and you pack it with books and stuff. It can be anything. I personally have a backpack that on the weekend, on Sunday's my day, that I do like a long hike, and I have just a bunch of weights in there with some washcloths to keep them from digging into my back, and I get my little weighted walk in. So anyway, that's the bone health thing. Then on to more like stress management. And of course, all that, we know that exercising and moving helps our stress. We know that. But other things that you think of as more stress, things that you can do. I know that a lot of the clinicians, we teach our patients about breath work and mindfulness, meditation. You can find wonderful meditation apps online, for free. Those are great. They can help people fall asleep. They have them for that, just help you start your day. There's a type of breathing. There are many types of breathing. You can just Google that, different types of breath work. You can Google it. That helps calm. It helps calm. It helps with anxiety. Helps boost your mood. Those are all things that some good breath work does. There's one called the physiological sigh, which is supposed to be even more beneficial than mindfulness and meditation, and some of the, like box breathing, is supposed to be even better, but I won't go into it, but it's called physiological sigh. It's not hard to do, it's easy. And in terms of, things that boost your mood and decrease anxiety, I know that we talk about breath work, but if you're in an anxious place in your world and you're trying to reduce that, do keep that in mind, that doing some real specific breathing exercises can really help reduce your heart rate, bring you calm, bring you back to a place of non-heightened anxiety. And it really works. It truly, truly works. If you're in a situation where you feel anxious and you feel like you need to be strong and get a sense of, I can't think of the word I want, but power, but that's not exactly the word I'm looking for. But let's say you're a new employee and you have to do one of the education talks. You've not done a talk before, right? And you're anxious about that first time or third time. You can do some of that breath work quietly in your own office, in your own space, in the bathroom, wherever. And another thing you can do is a power stance, which probably a lot of y'all know about also, but it's this. And do that for a minute. And it does a lot of things physiologically that helps you gain a sense of focus and concentration, brings a sense of calm, but also brings a sense of empowerment. You can do that. Easy. Along with the sweaty potty. Music. So there are a lot of things that you can do for your own self-care. Laughter. Laughter's good. The nursing department's really good at that. But music, listening to music, find music you enjoy. Listening to music is a mood booster. It helps boost motivation. It helps decrease anxiety. Another thing, obviously self-talk, right? We all know that our self-talk has a powerful impact on ourselves. And so one of the things you can do with this, obviously, is try to not have negative messages going into your brain, right? But also a way to look at it is to have the most generous interpretation of something. So in other words, let's say you get cut off in traffic. If you might say, I'm not going to do that, but this is just an example. You get cut off in traffic, and your normal response would be, what a jerk, wow, idiot, right? If you can reframe that into, whoa, that guy is in a hurry, and he's hope he's going to be careful so he doesn't hurt himself or hurt somebody, but like, he must be in a big hurry to have not been paying attention like that. Or this is an example that I was sharing some of this with my daughter, Chloe. And she has 2 young ones, and she said that one of the things that, so it's not about just being most generous interpretation internally with yourself, but also like with your kids, like in reference to your spouse perhaps, right? Maybe your husband or wife did something that ticked you off, that you're frustrated with. Rather than the negative thing coming out in front of the kids, which you don't want, right, is try to give it the most generous interpretation. And this is an example. And an example is her husband doesn't reliably loosen the harness when he lets the kids out of the car seat. And then she has to pull it and get it loosened to get them back in because it's too tight, right? So that is an annoyance to her, but she said, so instead, in trying to be more generous in her interpretation, she'll say something like, oh, that Daddy's just so strong, you know, that he can get you out without even loosening this. I need to, so give me a minute, or Mama has to loosen it. So I know, huh? So good for her that she can do that, but that's an example of that. Screen time. You know, there have been a lot of studies, I'm sure that everybody knows about the dangers of screen time, like in our kids especially, but it also applies to us as well. Again, what they're finding, or what they're thinking, is that a lot of the rise in anxiety, ADHD, things of that nature, a lot of that has to do with the increased screen time. And the smaller the screen, the worse it is. So in other words, it's not realistic that our kids aren't going to have screen time, right? Or that we're not going to have screen time. But the bigger the screen, the better. And for instance, if a child has a phone, their world is very narrow, right? It's just right there. Whereas even if they're just watching TV, they sense more than just the TV. They sense the room around the TV. That whole world is bigger, and that's a better thing. Also, what I've read some about is trying to think of screen time more in a collaborative sense, if possible. So in other words, a Friday movie night with the family all together, watching a movie, would be better than everybody in their own room watching on their own TVs, or watching on their own tablet, or watching on their own little phone. You know, it's because it's collaborative, you're doing it together. Or even thinking about like, you know, you're making dinner, and the kids, if you're saying, no, you're not going to be in your room doing it. If y'all want to watch something, watch it on the TV, for instance. Well, then they're squabbling, right? You have to argue over what they're going to watch, right? Well, that's learning how to do that. That's learning how to negotiate. That's learning how to solve a problem. That's learning how to get along and not have it all just easy peasy. So those are good life lessons to learn. It's not fun to listen to them squabbling in the background, but that's a way, it's a collaborative way of having that screen time. And then similarly, even like doing a video game with your child is better than the child just watching endless YouTube shorts. That's not good. Because at least that's collaborative too. You know, it's a measure of being collaborative. So be aware of that they're really thinking that the increased screen time, not just with kids, but with adults, is lending toward difficulty focusing and concentrating, more of that ADD, ADHD kind of symptom stuff, more anxiety. So that's another thing to be aware of for our kids a lot, but also for ourselves. Let's see. And then this is an interesting one. This is one of my last ones I'll share with you. White noise, right? I know that a lot of parents nowadays, I know my grandchildren, they have the little white noise machine on to help them sleep, right? Well, their advice now, current advice is, yeah, go ahead if you need that to help them sleep, but don't have it on all night. Don't have it on really loud, because when our children are infants and children, they need that hearing input to help with language development and other neuroplasticity stuff going on in our brains. They need that foundation to build. And if you have the whole night of without, you know, a door being slammed or whatever, without these things that kind of call your brain to, you know, trigger and fire and be active and figure out what that is, even if you're sleeping, they're thinking that is a negative effect on early language development and a good foundation for that. But then conversely, interesting, we as adults, we have the foundation, right? So, white noise at a low level in the background can help us focus and concentrate. So if you're doing the Pomodoro and you're working on something, you want to get that charting done in a concentrated way, put your timer on for half an hour, turn the white noise low, and you'll be able to zoom in better and focus in a more concentrated way. It's another interesting thing. And then I guess one last thing that I want to share, which is another interesting, is that you know, they're talking more and more now about neuroplasticity and the fact that our brain, you know, is always rewiring itself, and you can learn and grow and all that even as we age if you just keep it active. One of the best things you can do for yourself is go out in nature and be out there for like 15-20 minutes in nature by yourself, not with headphones, not listening to a podcast or even music, ideally, and just take a walk or sit and just let your mind kind of free float. It's not about trying to be mindful and concentrate on, you know, mindfulness and it's not a meditation, it's just a free floating thing. And it's supposed to help your brain kind of regroup and, you know, kind of pull things together, let some things go and pull some other things together, and gives you the chance to, when you walk away from it, you have the benefit all day of better focus, better learning, that kind of thing. So, nature. So anybody have any other, and then I'm going to pick on Kelly. Kelly obviously has a nice self-care thing she does for herself with her lip balm, right? There are a lot of ways that you can have self-care, but, you know, pay attention to what resonates for you. What do you do for yourself? I challenge you to think about that. What do you do for yourselves that is self-care? And, you know, like here at work, do you take a moment and connect with your coworkers and laugh together? Do you take a break and walk away for a little bit? At home, do you take a walk? Do you play with your dog? Do you play with your kids? Do you enjoy cooking? We know somebody likes where'd Taylor go? So any things, pay attention to them and embrace it, and be purposeful about finding things that give you joy, that give you happiness, and do that for yourselves. Do that for yourselves. Does anybody have any amazing ideas that, like, who would have thought, but this is something I do that I love and it really is a great thing? Anybody have any ideas? Metal detecting. You like to go and just explore? Cool. Very cool.